Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fundamental economic shift. You see, for over a decade now, we've basically lived in a content economy, but we are rapidly, and I mean rapidly, transitioning into a knowledge economy. This is a totally new system where human insight is actually being transformed into perpetual assets. So today, we're going to examine the underlying mechanics of how raw intellectual horsepower is currently being utilized out there. And more importantly, how emerging infrastructure is proposing to completely re-architect this dynamic. Let's dive right in and see how this all works. So here's a question for you. Who actually profits from your knowledge? It's a pretty pointed question, right? I mean, we spend literally years accumulating expertise, mapping out complex domains, and really refining our judgment. But as AI models scrape and ingest the entire internet at absolute breakneck speed, your deeply honed insight has suddenly become the most valuable commodity on the market. The entire underlying architecture of these models relies completely on the ingestion of high-quality human data. So keep this question in the back of your mind today as we analyze the source material. Who is actually capturing the economic value of what you know, and exactly how long does that extraction last? All right, let's get into Section 1, the next creator economy. Think about the past 10 years. The content economy was all about rewarding attention, right? Making videos, writing posts, endlessly optimizing for clicks and views. It was an ecosystem built entirely on engagement metrics, but the source material we're analyzing today points to a really profound evolution. The next creator economy actually bypasses attention entirely. It revolves around knowledge. We're talking about a massive shift from creating digital media just for human consumption to providing the raw, structural, intellectual horsepower that makes future machine learning models actually function. In this new paradigm, utility completely replaces attention as the primary metric of value. Creators aren't just entertainers or commentators anymore, they're the fundamental data providers for the world's most advanced computational engines. It's a total game changer. Moving on to Section 2, the AI value problem. We talk about AI a lot like it's this magic autonomous engine. But under the hood, these systems are entirely dependent on highly specific human contributions. They absolutely require expert insights to map out complex domains and build accurate foundational knowledge. They need massive amounts of structured data to actually process logic effectively. And on top of that, they rely on ongoing human validations, like reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF, to correct those crazy hallucinations. Plus, they need nuanced human judgment to navigate weird edge case evaluations. Without these four pillars, the algorithms literally stall. They just cannot self-correct or generate reliable outputs in complex scenarios. Yet, historically, these massive human contributions that train and refine the models, they've been largely uncredited and, frankly, uncompensated. And that brings us to the core friction of our current era: disposable input. Right now, the AI industry basically treats human contributions as, single-use, scraped data. A model ingests an expert insight, leverages a human validation for fine-tuning, and then just moves on. The human creator is treated as a disposable input in a one-way extraction model. The fundamental flaw here is an economic one. It's essentially a system of rent extraction that completely locks creators out of any ongoing value compounding. Think about it. The model gets smarter, its utility scales up, and it generates recurring revenue for the host company. Meanwhile, the actual human whose brainpower and judgment made that exact optimization possible left entirely out of the loop after that very first extraction. But there's an alternative to that extraction, and it's called the perpetual asset. This is what happens when your knowledge contributions are transformed into ongoing economic instruments. Instead of being scraped once and tossed aside, your insights are structured to mathematically track their own utility. Every single time an AI model queries your specific expertise or relies on your validation to generate a response, that data acts as a permanent asset, working continuously on your behalf. We are looking at a massive paradigm shift here, from disposable data scraping to perpetual asset ownership, which fundamentally changes the entire economic relationship between human intellect and machine learning architectures. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, securing on-chain ownership. Now, the source material points to some really specific infrastructure emerging to actually solve this problem, centered around platforms like Codata. They are actively building the architecture right now to ensure contributors can finally participate in the value that AI creates. Rather than just theorizing about a knowledge economy, they're out there actually constructing the decentralized protocols required to capture the value of human insight. It represents a highly practical application of moving away from these walled garden, centralized data silos toward a system where the contributors themselves maintain a real, tangible stake in the data sets they help build. So, how does it work? Well, the proposed mechanism relies on a brilliant three-step architecture. Step 1 secures ownership on-chain. This means your data isn't just sitting in some centralized server controlled by a single tech giant. It is cryptographically anchored directly to your identity. Step 2 ensures provenance is preserved permanently. A cryptographic hash provides this immutable, unchangeable history of your knowledge that literally cannot be erased, altered, or misattributed to someone else. And finally, Step 3 ties royalties to actual usage. Because ownership and provenance are mathematically secured on a distributed ledger, smart contracts can actually connect your contributions directly to a compensation model. When an AI queries your data or utilizes your specific validation, the protocol autonomously routes a micro-royalty right back to you, completely cutting out the need for traditional middlemen.
And that brings us to our final part today. Section 4, Endless AI Royalties.
I want to slow down for a second and focus on this quote. Knowledge isn't just something AI consumes, it's something people create. This thesis is honestly the crux of the entire argument we are analyzing today. Because let's be real, it's remarkably easy to get mesmerized by the incredibly sophisticated output of large language models and completely forget the supply chain of actual human intelligence operating beneath them. Machines aren't just synthesizing wisdom out of thin air, they are running incredibly complex statistical probabilities on human creation. Acknowledging that supply chain and truly recognizing that human intellect is the raw material powering this whole technological leap is absolutely the prerequisite for establishing a functional, sustainable economic model for the future. And this puts the focus squarely back on you and your own data assets. By reframing how we view our cognitive output, the power dynamic inherently shifts. The specific insights, the structured data sets, and the daily validations that you provide, they aren't just digital exhaust meant to be swept up by web crawlers. They are your capital. And just like real estate or equities or intellectual property, you have the absolute right to assert ownership over that capital. In a mature knowledge economy, creators treat their data as a distinct financial asset class. They control its licensing, they track its provenance, and they demand a proportional share of the yield it generates in the modern market. This leads directly to a really stark economic contrast. The legacy model relies on a one-time payment. Maybe you receive a flat fee for contributing to a data set, and then the acquiring corporation extracts the compounding value of that data in perpetuity, forever. The proposed decentralized infrastructure shifts this entirely to endless AI royalties. The economic argument here is pretty straightforward. If an AI system is going to utilize your specific insight continuously over the next decade to generate recurring revenue, well, the compensation model absolutely must reflect that ongoing utility. It transforms a discrete zero-sum transaction into a continuous economic asset that yields dividends for as long as the data remains useful. So we've traced the whole evolution today, from the legacy content economy all the way to the new frontiers of on-chain knowledge ownership. As we step into this wild new paradigm, the critical question really remains. Will your knowledge be exploited as a disposable input, or will you secure it to generate endless AI royalties? The decentralized infrastructure to protect and monetize your insights is literally being deployed right now, challenging those traditional data monopolies head-on. How you choose to value, protect, and leverage your own cognitive output moving forward, well, that is entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer.